The latest in military strategy: mindfulness. As commander of the coalition forces in Iraq, Major General, but his best decisions, he said, relied on a tool as ancient as it is powerful. Major mindfulness: the practice of using breathing techniques, similar to those in meditation, to gain focus and reduce distraction, is inching into the military in the United States and those of a handful of other nations. For more stories about the experiences and costs of war. This winter, Army infantry soldiers at Schofield Barracks in Hawaii began using mindfulness to improve shooting skills. For instance, focusing on when to pull the trigger amid chaos to avoid unnecessary civilian harm. The British Royal Navy has given mindfulness training to officers, and military leaders are rolling it out in the Army and Royal Air Force for some officers and enlisted soldiers. The recently adopted this week, NATO plans to hold a 2-day symposium in Berlin to discuss the evidence behind the use of mindfulness in the military. A small but growing group of military officials support the techniques to heal trauma-stressed veterans, make command decisions, and help soldiers in chaotic battles. I was asked recently if my soldiers call me General Moonbeam, said Major General. The approach, he said, is based on an associate professor of psychology at the University of Miami. She is the senior. The paper, in the journal Progress in Brain Research, reported that the troops who went through a month-long training regimen that included daily practice in mindful breathing and focus techniques. The findings, which build on previous research showing improvements among soldiers and trained in mindfulness, are significant in part because members of the Special Forces are already selected for their ability to focus. The fact that they're the best, and what they're trying to do is the hardest, she said. Dr. Jha has spoken to the United States Army War College and the British Parliament, and she has been a consultant to New Zealand's Defence Force and military officials in the Netherlands. When the science shows that techniques that focus and calm the mind allow people to perform better and make them less likely to overreact to incoming stimulation, whether a flash of movement, sound or an onslaught of information on a device. The neuroscience of mindfulness involves, in part, strengthening a part of mental capacity known as working memory, a short-term, moment-to-moment catalog of tasks understood by scientists to effectively hold only a few pieces of information at one time. As working memory clouds through overload, decisions become jumbled and reactions more impulsive. Breathing-induced. The recent study found that service members who train for 4 weeks experience significant improvement, but those who train for only 2 weeks do not. The mindfulness training comes as the military is exploring other options to intensify soldier focus, even the possibility of into soldiers' brains. But those potential widespread adoption of mindfulness has challenges, including creating a staff of trainers, said Commander William McNulty, a commissioned officer in the United States Public Health Service. He helped train us. Mr. McNulty said that about a third of the soldiers readily embraced the idea, a third engaged with curiosity, and a third seemed skeptical. Mr. McNulty likened the benefits of practicing mindfulness to those of, say, doing push-ups. You might not drop. In the news magazine of the Royal New Zealand Air Force, known as the All Blacks, the military, referring to its research, also has shown that use of mindfulness. That has been the experience of Britain's chief evangelist for use of mindfulness in the military, Commander Mr. Bowden, decorated for service in many combat zones, discovered when he retired from active duty in 2008 that had grown withdrawn and angered by the horrors had seen mangled civilian bodies fused together in combat zones. Deaths of 48. When he went to a psychiatrist in 2008, she broke down in tears after he described his experiences. Mr. Bowden he now starts and ends his day with 5 minutes of breathing exercises. He uses the amount of brain power it frees by not being trapped in the past or the future is incredible, Mr. Bowden said. The military is. Mr. Boughton has thought about whether mindfulness is anathema to conflict. The purists would. What he means is that mindfulness is often associated with peacefulness. But, he added, Major General, I was not taking notes. I remember in the end, he said, mindfulness allowed him to reduce conflict by better understanding. I am not saying, be soft, he added. I am saying, peace takes a lot of hard work.
Raindrop, drop top smoking, no cooking the hot pot. Fucking on your bitch, yeah, that. Looking up, open the park pot.